Play at Novibet.
Hello and welcome to the latest edition of the Irish Angle with Emma Nagle and Johnny Ward, and it's Cheltenham Race Week, so we're all very excited. It's all about to start. We're recording this 1 o'clock on Monday, so it's the last few hours of it. Emma, how are you going?
Yeah, getting there now. The build-up seems to have been going on for nearly well over a year at this stage. I think the last few months, it gets really intense. But yeah, it's kind of getting. I think just yesterday I started to get really excited for it actually, because I suppose declarations came out for the Tuesday, and it's finally here.
Yeah, the same. What about you, Johnny? You weren't too keen on it a couple of weeks ago when we were talking. You said you're a bit deflated about the thought of it. Any more excitement now?
Yeah, I'm doing a piece for the Currency there, which I've left to another lastminute.com job. I have to start writing it shortly because I'm getting a flight over to England this evening. But I'm just thinking of how do I start the article, because it's about like the change in dynamic of Cheltenham since I got into it. And I was thinking of the story of a trainer who went over to England the last couple of weeks to sell a few horses. He said there was literally no money in England at all to buy a horse. I'm thinking of how do you provide a nexus between the England-Ireland game with England heavy outsiders on Saturday and beating Ireland versus the way Cheltenham has changed. And I just got an email in here. Princess Catherine apologises for editing photo after news agencies withdrew it. And you may not know what that's about, Princess of Wales. And it was about kind of like basically a photo edit and photoshopping. And maybe I'll use that, Finny. There is no way whatsoever anyone can Photoshop or change the narrative this week, which will be utter Irish dominance. Now, I was on a preview panel last week in England, and the more actually we went through every single race, I hadn't eaten that morning, and it was a 4-hour job. I was very hangry, so by the last race I just wanted to kind of get through it. But to be fair, the vast majority of the races I was like, okay, this is quite compelling. But then this morning, when you've declarations of 22 horses on aggregate and 3 Willie Mullins odds-on shots for the first 3 Grade 1s on day 2, you're like, this is not what Cheltenham should be all about. So I'm excited, but I reflect a lot of a lot of people who are not getting the same buzz from this Cheltenham as they used to.
I think they will come Friday. That's my own thought anyway. Like I've been both sides of this all the way through. Oh yeah, it's a pity Constitution Hill isn't running and other horses not going for certain races and all that. But like when it boils down to it, it's a cracking 4 days, isn't it? I'm really looking forward to tomorrow.
And the Gold Cup, the Gold Cup is just the most special renewal. I think it has everything going for it. So definitely.
Yeah. I agree. Yeah, it's going to be a fantastic. That's the one race I'm looking forward to more than any other all week, I have to say. Well, that and the National Hunt Chase tomorrow, because I've a particular interest in that. Embassy Gardens, and after backing Willie Mullins to win it the last 2 years, and I got away with Murder last year with Gaillard de Menil, and I think it'll win again with Embassy.
I'm going to scare the shit out of you now because I fancy it out of the way as well.
There you go. That's I'll have me bet so. Yeah, but I am looking forward to that. Look, let's have a quick look at some of this. Tuesday, first thing I notice is 93 horses declared. Only 41 of them are British. So we 51 Irish, 1 French, and 41 British. Looking at the graded races, particularly the Supreme, 3 British trained runners, the Arkle 4, the Champion Hurdle 4, the Mayor's Hurdle 4, the National Hunt Chase 4. It's crazy, isn't it? The British seem to have lost the plot here, have they? I know with the rugby we thought they were going to be slaughtered by Ireland, but they turned out and came out all guns blazing and beat us in the last couple of minutes and everything. Can they do something similar here, Emma? Are they gone?
To be honest, I'd say the Prestbury Cup could be pretty brutal scoring at the end of it. Like looking at the first day there, barring some kind of miracle, I can only see them getting one winner really. They might win the Ultima. I think the Irish haven't won that since 2006. But again, Willie Mullins has a pretty fancied winner in there. So, like looking at the graded races in particular, it's kind of hard to make a case for a lot of the English runners. The strength just doesn't seem to be there this year at all. Like it was interesting reading your blog earlier, like about how everything has changed like dramatically in the last 20 years and. Yeah, looking at it now, it's very hard to see how they're going to have a good week. Looking at the first day in particular, it's going to be. I could easily see 7 Irish winners in here.
Yeah, I could as well, I have to say, which is disappointing in a way, isn't it? But look, it is what it is. Another thing, Johnny, just getting away from that a little bit, is Willie Mullins. We know how dominant he is and everything else, but there seems to be, I suppose he's always developing the situation and changing what he does and improving all the time, which is why he stays ahead of everyone else and is getting stronger and stronger. But I noticed Tuesday, the declarations for Tuesday, he has 5 horses wearing a hood for the first time. I see on Wednesday he's 2 more. It seems an odd thing to do. Would you say that that's correct, or would there be a possibility that they declared these wrong and they're only going to wear the hood to the start? It seems odd. He's got Mystical Power and Mischief in the Supreme. He's got Gaelic Warrior, Ashrow Diamond, Embassy Gardens, all wearing hoods for the first time. What do you make of that, Johnny?
To be honest, now I wasn't aware of that until you said it before the show, so it kind of had half gone over my head. And that's staggering, because Willie really isn't. He's not a massive headgear fan. You know, you think of maybe the Dermot Wells on the flat and quickly put headgear on horses, and you know, it's normal in other yards. It's definitely not the norm for Willie to do that. And you know, in some of these cases, you're thinking, okay, well, I suppose you look at you know, his Mirazor West yesterday, who was again keen. He did put a hood on him, and maybe he needs it, but like, does Embassy Garden really need it? He looks an out and out there. I wouldn't have thought Mystical Power needs it. He's a horse that's going to have a good pace to sit off. And I honestly was really, really surprised by this. I don't know what, there has to be a story behind it. Maybe Evan knows more.
I did hear Ruby talking about it. I think they just kind of sat down and made the decision. I think like Gaelic Warrior, like Willie's horses, like I think the vast majority of them wear earplugs kind of since as long as I can remember. They've always been wearing earplugs, and I think they had an issue last year with Gaelic Warrior on the way down to the start at Cheltenham. An earplug fell out and they couldn't get it back in. Like, some horses can be very funny about matching up stuffing something down their ear to block the noise. So I think it might be just a caution that way, just in case they had any issues with earplugs on the day. And hood's pretty much the same thing as earplugs anyway. I probably wouldn't read too much into it, to be honest. Just listening to Ruby, it kind of just seemed like, why not throw them on more so than anything else?
Yeah,
but like, you see, if remember when in the World Cup, Vinny, when they brought in I could never ever get my head around. Now, football is run by by people who probably are in it for somewhat the wrong reasons or don't really understand the game. But I could never understand why in the World Cup they'd introduce something like 10 minutes of injury time as opposed to 3. They'd introduce it in the Euros or World Cup at the best stage as opposed to some 2-bob tournament and see how it gets on. Surely Willie isn't experimenting with hoods, carte blanche at Cheltenham. It can't be right.
No, it does seem odd, doesn't it? But having said that, 2 of the horses in particular, Gaelic Warrior tends to be a bit free and a bit awkward in races. A hood will probably do him no harm. And Embassy Gardens has had a tendency to run a bit free as well, and ran with the choke out last year in the Ballymore or whichever novice hurdle it ran in last year. So there could be a case for saying to get the 3 miles, 6 furlong odd trip of the National Hunt Chase, Embassy Gardens probably needs the hood. I'm glad to see it anyway, I have to say.
Gaelic Warrior doesn't need to settle though. He just needs to jump straight. You know?
Concentrate, I suppose. Yeah.
It's like I prefer nearly like blindfolds than a hood on him, because maybe he jumps straight then. But he's the horse on day one. You're like, I can't wait to see what happens here.
Yeah. Oh, there's some exciting stuff coming. One other thing, Johnny, this is one for you particularly, I think, because you're always into the breeding side of things. I just noticed that the Champion Hurdle, no Irish bred runner in the race. That has to be a first, does it?
That's staggering. Now, I mean, you're always kind of jumping to conclusions that based on something that might need a conclusion, because like Irish bred horses are obviously doing exceptionally well, but maybe there's an emphasis on stoutly bred National Hunt horses to sell in point points to be Gold Cup horses rather than horses bred to be out and out 2-mile hurdlers. I'm speculating here, but you know, you look at the way that the Irish industry has gone there. If you want to breed a horse and horses are bred to be sold, I suppose, in many respects now in national racing, you're breeding to sell a point-to-pointer, maybe not a champion hurdler. I don't know if that makes sense.
Yeah, well, I'd looking back, I picked a random year, 2006, Brave Inca won the champion hurdle. 8 of the first 9 home were Irish bred that year. So I'm presuming that's a random sample, and it probably is reflective of where we were maybe 15, 20 years ago in the game, but it's definitely changed. There's some amount of French. Looking at it, I think we've got French favourites for all the top races this week. All the main Grade 1 races. are all, or the senior races are all got French favourites in it. Emma, what do you make of that?
Yeah, I actually hadn't noticed it now until you mentioned it, but like I suppose like the champion hurdle division has kind of been, I suppose, weak-ish in the last couple of years. And is it the fact that, you know, I've heard Johnny Mercer talk about this last year during the flat year, like if you had a good horse on the flat, a decent horse on the flat, then he always gets sold abroad now, whereas before, maybe those types, the Irish bred kind of flat horses might have actually gone hurdling if they, you know, if they weren't a top class flat horse, it might have been a good option for them. But you don't see that happening so much anymore. It seems to be more horses kind of imported from France, these kind of young, precocious hurdling types, more so than ones coming off the flat, which is probably would have made up a fair percentage of the champion hurdlers back in the day, I presume. But yeah, it's surprising now looking through it. A few of the stallions of the horses who were bred abroad have been imported to Ireland since. So hopefully it can swing around again. Like, you don't like to see the French dominating the Irish, the racing so much, but a few English bred runners in there as well. I think the last couple of them have been bred in the UK, like Constitution Hill and Honeysuckle as well. So the French mightn't have it all their own way yet.
Yeah. All right, we'll move on. We've loads more to talk about. Next one is Nicky Henderson and his stable form. What do you think, Johnny? Would you back one of his this week?
Yeah, well, again, on the preview night, you're kind of saying, like, I would prefer to see how his horses run on day one rather than, I suppose, absolutely banging into Sergino and horses like that later in the week, see how they're going. And it was, like, I have to say now, I was startled by it last week, how many horses he had pulled up, and we hasn't actually had a runner since God, I didn't realize this. He hasn't had a runner now since the second. So in the last 9 days, so the stats here are actually a little bit flattering. I made it of his last 15 runners, I think, give or take, most of them have been pulled up, and most of them have been relatively short prices. So it is a concern. You have the backdrop of Constitution Hill not being right as well. So I'd be just wary and seeing how his horses get on. How the horse gets on that he's running in the Supreme, and how the horse get on early on in the festival to see how he's going.
Yeah, of course, he's the supplemented horse, Iberico Lord, and the champion hurdle as well. It's actually a few quid for that, which would surprise me. But then again, JP probably knows more than we do. Just looking at the form some of the stables are in, obviously Willie Mullins is in astonishing form. It's 41% strike rate in the last 21 days. Then we have Henry de Bromhead. He's hit a purple patch as well, 21% the last 21 days. And Ben Pauling in the UK, he keeps knocking in winners too. He'd surely be knocking at the door somewhere during this week in Cheltenham. What do you think, Emma? Stable form coming into it, it's important, isn't it?
Definitely. Like Ben Pauling has a few fancied ones, but Henry de Bromhead is kind of one you'd be particularly taking note of. Like he's one of seem to kind of peak this time of the year every year. He always has a kind of a good Cheltenham Festival. He had 3 winners yesterday. And like looking at some of his runners over the week, there's some really interesting ones in there. And like the one thing you say about Henry's runners, like they always, maybe it's the sun on their back, or is he just peaking them for this time of the year? But it's something I would take note of. And the Henderson form is definitely a worry. Like you'll have to watch kind of closely how the first few of them run. Like he had a horse pulled out again at the weekend after a bad scope with veterinary advice, and to take him out of Doncaster. And like, yeah, coming up kind of towards the end of the week, Sergino looks like he's banker, but I mean, if his horses had been underperforming all along, like you'd be happy enough to take him on. Yeah, like Mullins obviously flying as usual. He hasn't really been in bad form all year long, but the form of the Bromhead stable is definitely one I'd be taking note of.
Yeah, the other thing now is Willie Mullins. He's 6 winners away from a remarkable 100 winners at Cheltenham, which seemed impossible 15 or 20 years ago. He didn't think anyone would ever get over 50, never mind 100. Looking at that, Johnny, he's got the first 5 favourites Tuesday. He has strong chances in all 7 races Tuesday. He's got the first 4 favourites on Wednesday, including 3 of which are odds on. When will he hit the 100? Could he do it Tuesday?
I mean, it's almost a little bit sad, I suppose, that Maureen, his mother, isn't there to reflect on it. And I remember, I think Tony put up a tweet, and the COVID, the last Cheltenham where the COVID was just kicking off, and Maureen Mullins was at that festival, and I believe the only thing she was giving out about when she came home was that she didn't back all these winners that her son Willie had trained. What a remarkable woman, and she won't be there for the 100. But like, honestly, and no joking aside, Vinny, this is exactly why the Luton of Cheltenham was a bad idea. Like, you know, the mayor's races for me are just have absolutely no place in Cheltenham. They actually discriminate against geldings. 3 races geldings can't run in, and 3 races that are basically have been half mopped up by Willie, as I would do if I were training horses as good as he is. But because of these stupid mares races now, you don't have Lossiemouth taking on State Man, and you have all these divisions, and it kind of helps Willie's probably able to kind of tell a prospective owner as well, like, I will be able to find a race for you at Cheltenham if you have a very good horse, and I will do my best to kind of spread the horse around as best I can for owners and for the yard. So it's an amazing achievement from Willie. He's astounding, and I think one can reflect as well on the fact that Gavin Cromwell is investing the guts of £1 million to expand his operation with the new gallop for flat horses and for national hunt horses, so that he can kind of compete with Willie Mullins. In Britain, I don't think there are trainers investing loads of money in racing to compete with Willie Mullins, because they've basically given up.
Yeah, you could be right. The other couple of things there is people investing in facilities. Willie doesn't have the greatest facilities I've ever seen. There was a time he only had about a 3 furlong gallop. He then extended it into, he's got whatever he has now, 6 or 7 furlongs up that hill. But what do you make of that, Emma? You've been in a lot of the yards for us the last year or so. It wouldn't be the greatest facilities you've ever seen, but down in Willie's.
It probably is the most striking one, definitely, for sure. I remember we went down a year or 2 ago. Like, he's got up. It's a flat oval. It's, I don't know, it's nearly a mile, I'd say, around, and there's a kind of a shorter cutoff you can go. He has a sand gallop as well, which is probably for an easier day, which is a bit mad to hear. But like, you step on his gallop and like you'd nearly go knee deep into it. It's absolutely crazy. I'd say some of the English trainers came over and saw it, they'd lose their lives, like, because, you know, compared to what they'd be training on. I remember I tried to walk around it there one they were finished right now, and I said I'd go for a stroll around. I got about halfway and I gave up because I was getting tired. It was it was tough going now. It's only about a mile around. So that's why these horses are so fit. And yeah, it's just a totally kind of different way of training. And I'd say a lot of trainers are kind of trying to copy that, I suppose, in a way. But yeah, it's very different than what you'd normally see. It's kind of survival of the fittest, I suppose. They get incredibly fit, and they just kind of learn to keep galloping, I suppose.
You think he has like like a formula, like the secret to Coca-Cola, or like the Supermax sauce or something like that nobody can figure out?
I think just make it deeper. That's the key, isn't it? Just makes that gallop deeper every single time. So I don't know. And now it's the latest secret will be hoods. They'll all be wearing them this time next year, I'd say.
Tony actually had a good story about the gallop. Actually, I think it was when himself and Willie were young fellas, and they went out, and I think it must have been during the summer or during a dry spell, and they went out and watered their father's original gallop, and they got fair soft, and they got a bollocking or whatever because the gallop was so soft. And then I think he started training a load of winners in the next few weeks, so they kept watering it, and they kind of went from there.
There's definitely a story there. It happened by mistake, like going on holiday by mistake in Whitney, like where they kind of stumbled upon this formula that worked.
More water, that's the key now. But just looking at that now, the week that's coming up, we've got, it's basically, there's 3 elements to it in the sense of who's going to have winners. It's going to be Willie, it's going to be the rest of the Irish, or all the British. Out of those 3, what do you think? Who'll have the most winners out of those 3? Will it be Willie? Will it be the Irish? Or will it be the British? What do you think, Emma?
I can see the British maybe getting 7 or 8 winners. I can see Willie getting 9 or 10 winners. I'd probably go with the rest of the Irish just to be safe, because 10 winners seems like a lot. But I mean, he only had 6 last year, but like, you could see him nearly getting 6 in the first day this year. Like, it wouldn't be impossible for him to even go through the card on the first day. But I'd probably go rest of the Irish. You'd imagine Henry and Gordon and Gavin Cromwell and a few others will chip in with a few as well. Yeah,
maybe even Martin Brazel. Please God, that's one I'm hoping for. Johnny, what do you think? Just the last 2 years, that Prestbury Cup, it's been 18-10 each of the last 2 years. Will it be the same again? Will the English or the British as such come up with 10 winners between them?
Yeah, well, I suppose the best way of doing this is actually the mathematical way of coming up with the odds on each race. And of course, I haven't done that. And there was one bookmaker last week, lads, who the bookmaker was 1-20 Ireland in the Prestbury Cup. And I was like literally, short of people having guns at Holyhead to shoot at the boats, like, this is literally the greatest certainty ever. Like, it cannot be beaten. It's 1,000 to 1 on, and the shops are gone so bad now. If you went in with the juice, they'd probably ring it up. Like, but anyway, so the Prestbury Cup is certainty. I would say that's actually a good question. Now, Willie versus the rest of the Irish, because my feeling is that the British do very well to get. When you look at the Ultima that they always win, they're not going to win that this year. I feel that's a good example. I feel the British will really struggle to get to 10. I'd be more like 23-5 as opposed to Willie versus the rest of the Irish. Gordon Elliott will have a say, but Gavin Cromwell, and I think it was very timely that Gavin and Henry had crossed the car doubles yesterday. I'd go a dead heat, give or take. Maybe that doesn't really add up then if it's 23 though. It'll be close on between Willie and the rest of the Irish. Can anyone lend me 200 grand to go and put on that 1-20 shot?
Yeah, but that's another thing. This has just crossed my mind here. I don't think there's ever been a dead heat at the Cheltenham Festival. Now, I could be, someone might find that I'm wrong somewhere. I don't think there's ever been one. I looked at this a few years ago. Just very odd, isn't it? Considering it's the most competitive national hunt racing of the year, bar none, race after race with, fantastic finishes and everything else. But I don't think there's ever been a dead heat, which seems a bit odd, doesn't it?
You're writing it into history now anyway.
Oh, yeah. There's no doubt. Someone will put it in the comments if you know any better than us. You missed the one. There was one 4 years ago or something, but I don't think so. I can't ever remember there being a dead heat, which seems a bit odd. Because we get them fairly regularly at other meetings. Right, we're going to finish it up with one horse you can give us that you think is a bit of value, a little bit off the wall, one for Cheltenham. People have been watching all these previews you've been doing, Emma, and everything else, and they've gone through all the 28 races, and there's lots of short ones we all know about, but there must be something hiding in there. Is there? Have you got one, Emma?
I'm going to give two, and the first one will be totally off the wall. Cardinal Mustard, each ran the champion hurdle. I think he could win a big race with the blinkers on. He's about 66-1 or something. And if you just look at, he's run against State Man twice, and it's probably been the best 2 runs of his life. Maybe he just likes following him home, and I wouldn't be surprised to see him run into a place anyway. But a bit of a stronger fancy now. I really fancy Zenta for the county hurdle. Just looking at Willie's record in this race, I think between himself and Dan Skelton, they've won 8 of the last 9 renewals. 5 and 6-year-olds have a great record in the race. They've won, I think, 8 of the last 12. She's a 5-year-old kind of progressive hurdler. Thought she was eye-catching at the DRF last time as well, and could be a nice one for JP on his birthday week.
Yeah, his birthday week. 73 or 4, is he?
73, I think, yeah.
73, yeah. There you go. 73 years young. Okay, I'll give you one. It's a little bit odd as well. Well, it's actually not the greatest price in the world, this horse. It's only 10 or 12 to 1, but it runs in the Boodles, and it's Martin Brazel, Osei Partier. I'm not even going to tell you why, but basically this has a chance.
That's only like 10 to 1, is it?
Oh, I know, it's crazy. Yeah. It was 20s earlier in the week, but this will run a big race, I think. They fancy this one day in Galway, finished second, nice run back in October, and then they've run it in graded races since, and things just haven't worked out in the sense that it sits out the back and runs on a little bit near the finish. I think we'll see a different run. That's what I'm expecting anyway on Tuesday. I think it'll run very well. Ricky Doyle in the saddle. JJ Slevin has ridden it the last 3 times, but he rides the other owner's horse that's with Joseph that's favoured for the race, but I think Osei Partier will definitely be involved myself. What you make of that one, Emma? You were down with Martin Brazel earlier in the season.
Yeah, he was in the lot that we saw riding out below, and he's kind of been disappointing, I suppose. He was eye-catching his first one, I think, in Ireland, was he? But he's been mad keen since. But I just thought there was a bit of a twinkle in Martin's eye now when he was talking about him. So I wouldn't be writing him off at all, and Martin can definitely get them ready for the big day.
Oh, can't he just, yeah. Of all the Irish trainers, there's 2, Martin Brazel and Mouse Morris. When they run a horse in Cheltenham, you can get your ears pricked. They normally run well when those 2 happen. What, Johnny?
There's your dead heat in the Gold Cup, gentleman's game, and fast or slow.
There you go. Not to win a race though.
Dead heat.
Gentleman, there's your dead heat. The first dead heat ever at Cheltenham, gentleman's game, and fast or slow in the Gold Cup.
You think that'll happen, do you?
I've been slightly optimistic here, but I remember being on to Martin when I don't know if it was a while ago now. Like I can't remember what the context was. Maybe it was when he had a horse for the national or something, and he goes, I was trying to compare him to the likes of Shark, who also has run, of course, the Gold Cup. Who's a very good communicator and is able to get owners by meeting them at the races. And Martin's like, I drink if I have a pint, I go to the Harp in Kildare. It's the smallest pub in the town. I was fair enough anyway. I could kind of see Martin Brazel having a pint in this really quiet local. Jeez, I went to the Harp after the Derby, was it last year, the year before? The place was absolutely mobbed, and apparently it's become like the happening town they're happening publicly there. So I don't think Martin drinks in the Harp anymore. But if he does have a good week, there'll be a lot of people celebrate locally because he's a brilliant trainer. I tipped up an Epic Song in the Coral Cup last year. I tipped up Faster or Slow as well, and both of them were obviously touched off. But an Epic Songs connections have built by Ballymore in the Coral Cup this year. So I'm going to tip another Brassil horse. And like yours, Vinny, he's come in a bit in the betting. Watch the way he finished his last 2 races, won the 2 of them by 12 lengths after being nodding off the bridle. He has cheek piece on for the first time, and he's been given 139, which actually looks quite favourable. So I'm very, very sweet on him in the Coral Cup. And I delighted if Martin Brassil, Shark or Mouse could win the Gold Cup as well if Willie doesn't.
I'm going to have to pick a Martin Brassil horse to tip now. I wasn't prepared for this.
But just on to the final thing, the Gold Cup. It's going to be an absolute cracker, isn't it? There are so many potential stories within this, but realistically, if Galloping Des Champs turns up, the same one we saw in Leopardstown the last twice, I think there'll be no second myself. What do you think, Emma?
Yeah, it's definitely the highlight of the week. Kind of the one we're building up to all year long. But yeah, if Galloping Des Champs gets there in that form, there'll be no stopping him, I'd say. But like himself from Fast or Slow, I think have kind of been a highlight of the season, definitely. Like their little rivalry they've had kind of going back to Punchestown last year. And it's still kind of like the fact Fast or Slow has beaten him twice is kind of still having that small little doubt about him in the Gold Cup. Like maybe Fast or Slow can come back again, and as we are saying about Martin Brassil, he might have to pay us a bit of sponsorship for this, for hyping him up so much, but he'll definitely have him peaking for the day. And like while I'm strongly in the Galloping Des Champs camp, like Fast or Slow will definitely make it a fascinating race. Then you're showing the likes of Gentleman's Game and Ewick, who could maybe do anything in the race as well. So yeah, it's going to be exciting.
And Shishkin, another one. That horse definitely has the ability if it's all in at the right time. What do you think, Johnny?
Like that race. I mean, I really do resent the diluting of Cheltenham and the 4-day. I don't know if I ever were a 4-day fan. I certainly am, and now. But the Gold Cup is the one race that is just totally exempt from any horses going elsewhere, give or take. And this race has absolutely everything. It has a hot favourite, but it has like almost everyone in the cast. I mean, I was on a preview panel with Andy Holding, who's a very good judge, and he put up Brave Man's Game in the Gold Cup. I was like, what? Brave Man's Game? Like, well beaten in it last year, well enough beaten by Gentleman's Game, beaten in the King George. Like, I cannot see it. But Andy Holding was such a good judge, put up Brave Man's Game, and he's like 16-1, give or take. You have Shishkin, who you could argue is actually unexposed at staying trips, and has a bit of a kind of a squiggle as to whether he'll want to run on the day, whether he'll jump off, whether he really fancies it. Sometimes he gives me the impression he's kind of not really interested. And then you throw in the Irish horses, Fast or Slow. I really like Mouse's horse, Gentleman's Game each way. He's having only his 4th chase start in the Gold Cup, which was the same as Coneygree. So 22 fences to be jumped. Paul Townend riding the horse differently this year. What a race, an absolute extravaganza. The one thing, Vinny, I would say is as well, just in relation to the ground, I've kind of gone on about this for a while, but this is Cheltenham like no other Cheltenham in terms of the ground is going to be different in that they've had rain for 12 months now. So it's really gotten into the ground, and they had rain over the weekend. So this is not going to be, there was a Cheltenham the other year who was heavy at the start. This is going to be proper testing in the sense of the water table is high. And watch a race or two if you're kind of wary, because I think this is going to take a lot of getting.
I don't know. Yeah.
I think they're kind of predicting it to dry out a bit, are they?
Yeah.
They're predicting it to dry out, but it's after having so much. This is probably one of the wettest 12 months stretch in Ireland from the start of March to February. And you see all the meetings that were called off in Britain. Like, it will dry out, but they have had so much rain. It has really gotten into the ground. So I'd be wary of it in day one anyway, just to see how it's riding.
Already.
I'd be wary of it on day 2 for the cross country race, because that's in the middle, and all the new drainage they put in pours all the water out into the middle, which is bottomless heavy, I'd say. So that will be the testing one, but that's another cracking race, isn't it? Just there's so many races to look forward to. Can't wait for it. Anyway, it'll be all starting soon, so we'll finish up and let you go off and have your little bets. Make sure you Gamble responsibly. That's the most important thing this week, because it's a long week as well. Don't lose the head on the Tuesday. That's the key to this, to get you through to Friday.
Vinny, we're kind of laughing at that, but that's a really, really important point, because you can and I say this from my own perspective, and you can probably admit to some similar at times. You can get completely carried away at Cheltenham, and it is difficult in that regard. It's 28 races, and don't forget it's Dundalk on Friday as well.
There you have it. Dundalk on Friday. We're all still in trouble come Friday evening. Please God, we won't be looking at Dundalk on Friday. I have to say, I've just enjoyed the 4 solid days at Cheltenham. Anyway, do keep an eye on other videos. We've loads of content coming during the week. There's all sorts of different reviews and preview shows all during the week. Emma will be on. And make sure and join us next week. We'll be back. We'll review it all, and we'll realise where we went wrong. All right. Thanks for everything, guys. And we'll see you all again next week. Bye for now.